Tonight, you're not falling asleep, you're falling backwards, gently, into history. The world you're about to enter, rough roads, cold nights, and absolutely no toothpaste. But don't worry, you'll only be visiting. If these quiet time travel sessions help you unwind, consider liking and subscribing. No pressure, just vibes. Before you drift too far, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time the past is finding you. Lights low, sound soft. Let's slide into this one slow, like turning the page of an old book. The cold reaches you first, not the polite chill of a forgotten sweater in spring, but the intimate, soul-groping freeze of a Viking winter. It doesn't knock, it slides straight into your bones and unpacks. The kind of cold that makes your teeth ache even though they haven't been introduced to water in weeks. You're not under a duvet. Duvets won't be invented for centuries. You're buried in a crusty wool blanket that smells like damp goat and anxious peasant. It's scratchy, heavy, and tragically ineffective. Beneath you, the mattress is a lumpy concoction of straw, feathers, and historical disappointment. Every time you shift, it releases a puff of dust and the mild aroma of fungal decay. Congratulations, your first breath in Viking land is 30% mold. Someone's foot is on your back. You don't know whose. You're not even sure it's a human, but it's warm, and here warmth is currency. So you don't move, you simply breathe, slowly. Because each inhale tastes like old smoke, wet wood, and boiled cabbage regret. The longhouse is still dark. There are no windows, just a few crude slits in the timber walls, currently stuffed with moss to keep the demons out. And the cold in. Mostly the cold, but the demons are a solid second. Your breath fogs the air, mingling with other breaths in a quiet, communal humidity. It's as if the house is exhaling with you, one giant wheezing creature that might collapse from shared respiratory disease. You try to sit up. Your back protests like it's being asked to betray a long-standing agreement with gravity. Your shoulders ache from sleeping in the fetal position, which is the only viable configuration in a bed shared with two adults, a child, and, unless your memory is deceiving you, a very small pig named Bork. You hear it now. A grunt. Possibly from Bork, possibly from Uncle Einar, who sometimes grunts in his sleep and smells like pickled onions. Either way, it's a living presence, and it shifts beside you with the same energy as a wet sack of barley. Soothing. Above you, the roof creaks. The beams are carved with small runes, protective ones, meant to keep frost giants at bay. They haven't worked. The frost giants are here, and they're squatting in your lungs. Somewhere, far in the shadows of the room, a fire pit coughs a single orange ember, still glowing faintly beneath yesterday's ash. It's the only source of warmth, aside from collective body heat and stubborn denial. You think about crawling to it, feeding it a stick, maybe whispering a few desperate incantations. But your legs aren't ready. They are frozen sausages, filled with pins and sleepy despair. So you lie still, listening. There's a wet snore to your left, a wheeze to your right. A baby whimpers briefly, then is shushed by a leathery hand and something that might be a lullaby or a curse. A drop of condensed misery falls from the rafters and lands squarely on your forehead. Good morning. Your body smells like yesterday, which is also what you'll smell like tomorrow. There's no bath, not now, not soon, not unless you fall into a fjord and call it divine intervention. The room begins to brighten, if you can call it that. Brighten here means that the inky void shifts to a softer charcoal, the kind of light that lets you see shapes but not intentions. You become aware of your hands, calloused, cracked. You curl them under your chin to warm them, and in the process brush against something cold and slightly damp. A radish. Why is there a radish in your bed? You don't question it. You never do. In the Viking winter, questioning the radish just invites further complications. You start counting your toes. A morning ritual. Not for fun, but for frostbite. 10 is the goal. 9 is acceptable. 8 means you're going to need to chew herbs and lie a lot. Today you have 10. They feel like ice cubes wrapped in dead skin, but they're present. Time to move. You begin your ascent from the bed like a reanimated corpse performing interpretive dance. Every joint crackles. Your hip mutinies. Your spine negotiates for better terms. But eventually, with all the grace of a dropped sack of bones, you swing your legs onto the cold floor. Ah, the floor. The floor is compacted earth, with occasional patches of straw, bone fragments, and something sticky that may once have been food. It is uneven, like a personality test, and colder than betrayal. You hiss through your teeth as your feet make contact. You instantly regret being born. The longhouse is stirring now. Shapes move in the dark. Someone sneezes into their hands, then wipes it on the wall. A child pees into a clay pot with the nonchalance of someone who has never known shame. A dog stretches, shakes, and immediately begins licking something unmentionable. It is morning in Viking land, and you are alive. You shuffle toward the hearth. A low, circular pit lined with stones, filled with gray ash and historical trauma. You blow on it gently. An ember flickers, coughs, considers dying, then lives. You feed it slivers of dry bark, whisper sweet nothings, offer it the last crumbs of last week's hope. It rewards you with firelight. Weak, but real. You feel its warmth on your face like a kiss from a ghost who smells faintly of smoked eel. With fire comes visibility. You can now see the interior of your world. The longhouse is one room. No partitions, no privacy. Just a symphony of snoring, farting, coughing, scratching, and existential dread. Thick beams support the sagging roof, blackened by decades of indoor fire and desperation. The walls are timber, filled with moss for insulation and optimism. Everything is damp. Even your hope is damp. Your belongings, such as they are, hang from pegs by the wall. A cracked wooden comb. A knife with a bone handle. A pair of socks that were last worn during the reign of Charlemagne. You own what you can carry, and you carry what you can't afford to lose. There's movement beside you. A face emerges from a blanket, your sibling or spouse or friend, depending on the local custom and how the last few winters went. Their eyes are swollen from sleep, their hair a sculptural masterpiece of grease and gravity. They grunt. You grunt back. That is the full extent of morning conversation. A chicken hops down from the rafters and pecks at your toes. You gently push it away. It comes back. This is the eternal dance of man and chicken. You hear someone retch into a bucket, not violently, just casually, like they're pouring out last night's dreams. Another day begins, and so do you. Welcome to the past. You'll be staying a while. You don't wake up. You reanimate. There's no gentle stretch, no soft light filtering through linen curtains, no aroma of fresh coffee and vague optimism. No, you rise because something happens to you. A sudden gust of icy air clawing through the seams of your moss-stuffed wall, or a barefoot child stepping squarely on your bladder while chasing a rat the size of a chicken. There's a grunt. Not yours. It comes from the far side of the longhouse, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone relieving themselves just slightly too close to the food storage area. Privacy as a concept has not yet been invented, nor has indoor plumbing. You will smell things before you see them. The longhouse is slowly coming alive, not in the jubilant springtime Disney way, but in the twitching, groaning, fungal sort of way. A cough explodes in the corner. A goat bleats in protest. Someone farts, loudly. The sound is communal, almost festive. You shift under the wool blanket, which now feels like a damp, scratchy shroud soaked in sweat, animal grease, and generational fatigue. Beside you, a body stirs. Possibly your cousin, possibly your wife, possibly both, depending on the accuracy of the genealogy. They mumble something unintelligible, cough into your face, then roll over. You're greeted by a warm cloud of stale breath and dental despair. You love them, probably, but you do wish they'd brush, or at least chew on a twig. But the time for cuddling, if that's what you want to call mutual shivering under a lice-infested wool sheet, is over. The house has declared its mourning. You no longer have a say. You attempt to stand. First, you roll onto your side. Your shoulder pops audibly. Your knees don't so much bend as negotiate. You sit up slowly, cradling your spine like a newborn regret. The floor awaits, damp, freezing, and studded with debris that might be straw or bones or last month's bread crusts. You step on something sharp and wooden. You do not scream. You simply internalize the pain and add it to your growing mental collection. Your body smells like a decade of stress. You have not washed in. Let's not think about it. There was a stream nearby once before it froze and became a sentient ice demon. And there's the communal wash basin near the hearth, filled with grayish water, floating hair, and the kind of microbial life that could launch a new plague. You splash some of that on your face anyway. It's cold enough to slap your soul awake and gritty enough to exfoliate it. Your toilet is a shared wooden bucket in the corner, which is changed whenever someone remembers or tips it over by accident. You avoid eye contact with it, as if it can smell your judgment. Someone hands you a chunk of linen. It's your towel. It's also someone else's towel. And probably a scarf. It smells like boiled onions and trauma. You pat your face dry and wonder, briefly, if the smell is you. It is. Now for the teeth, or rather, the tooth. You rub it with a stick, a literal stick. It's called a chew stick, and it has been chewed so much it looks like a depressed porcupine. You rub your molars with the frayed end, not so much to clean them as to remind them they exist. There's no mint, no fluoride, just splinters and wishful thinking. A flea jumps from your neck to your sleeve. You flick it off with the weary resignation of someone who's already lost this war. From the hearth, a small fire flickers to life. It wasn't supposed to go out overnight, but someone, probably Bjorn, fell asleep instead of feeding it. Bjorn has one job. He fails at it. Daily. You approach the fire anyway, holding your hands out like a beggar in a snowstorm. The warmth is almost imaginary. Still, it's the only thing that doesn't smell like goat. Around you, others begin their rituals. A woman squats near the fire and begins grinding oats with a stone pestle. A child shoves their sibling aside to get the warm spot on the floor. An elder curses loudly at a rooster who seems to be mocking them from the rafters. A dog limps past, dragging something that might have been a sock, a mouse, or both. It looks at you with the same dead-eyed expression you see in the polished surface of a frozen pond. The dog is named Ragnar. He's not yours, he belongs to the house, and no one dares challenge his authority. Your morning wardrobe waits, folded neatly on a plank by the door. You reach for your tunic and, surprise, it's still wet. Not freshly wet, just permanently damp. Like it once made a blood pact with moisture and now can't let go. You pull it on anyway, it sticks to your skin like guilt. The wool itches. Everything itches. You scratch with a passion normally reserved for dramatic poetry. Outside, the wind howls. That's not an exaggeration. It actually howls. It sneaks in through cracks in the walls and caresses your neck like a cold-handed ex with unresolved issues. The sound is somewhere between a banshee and a dying elk. You shiver. You will shiver all day. You have accepted this as your baseline state. Your feet find your shoes, wooden clogs lined with straw and optimism. You slide them on, careful not to disturb the toe blister you've named Helga. She's been with you since October. She's part of the family now. You walk, if that's what we're calling this cautious limping shuffle, toward the door. The latch is frozen. Of course it is. You pound it with your fist until it surrenders, and the door creaks open like the gateway to a slightly colder hell. The outdoors greets you with a gust of icy air and a fine dusting of snow, just enough to say good morning and prepare to suffer. Your nostrils freeze slightly. Your eyebrows crunch. You inhale, and for a moment, your lungs consider unionizing. Your first task of the day, urinate into the wind without becoming a tragic, cautionary tale. You walk a few paces from the house, find a not-too-yellow patch of snow, and relieve yourself while looking at the horizon like a war-weary farmer in a folk song. It is still not yet breakfast. Back inside, a fight has broken out over a crust of bread. You intervene gently by offering half a boiled root vegetable. This is considered diplomacy. Someone sneezes. No one blesses them. In Viking culture, sneezes are just another sign the gods are annoyed with you. You sit, cross-legged on a low stool, and try to enjoy the final minutes before the real work begins. You are stiff, underfed, underwashed, and barely dressed. But you are alive. That's the best one can say, this early in the day. The sun is finally up. You can tell because the shadows are slightly less oppressive. The morning ritual is over. Now the real misery begins. Your house, and house is an extremely generous term, is not so much a dwelling as it is a glorified meat locker with seating. It is a structure born from desperation, timber, mud, and an aggressive overuse of moss. The longhouse is one long, communal rectangle, where warmth is theoretical, privacy is a sin, and personal space is exactly 2 fingers wide. From the outside, it looks like the earth tried to swallow it and changed its mind halfway. Sod walls, sloping roof, smoke belching from unseen seams, the kind of building that screams we weren't expecting company and we're mad about it. Inside, it's intimate. The air is thick. Thick with smoke, goat farts, and centuries of cohabiting bacteria. There is no chimney. That luxury has not yet been invented in your part of the world. Instead, smoke from the central fire pit simply exists, politely lingering just below the ceiling like an underachieving ghost, occasionally descending to slap your sinuses with the full might of carbonized everything. Your walls are wooden planks, rough-hewn and unapologetic, held together with wooden pegs, animal sinew, and fear of the outdoors. Every seam is stuffed with moss, wool scraps, or whatever was available and vaguely squishy when construction happened. You poke one seam and watch a tiny insect scurry out. You do not scream. That would imply surprise. The interior is dim, even at midday. What passes for windows are really just angry slits carved into the wall, usually plugged shut with rags or animal fur. They do not open or close. They exist in a state of emotional tension, like everything else here. Your ceiling is low, which means taller guests, should any survive the journey here, will have the unique experience of acquiring splinters in their scalp. The beams overhead are heavy, slightly warped and blackened by years of indoor smoke. One is held in place with rope. You do not touch it. You assume no one else does either. The floor is earth, and by earth we mean mud pressed down by feet, hooves, shame, and the occasional spilled broth. In drier months it cracks. In wetter months it squishes. Right now it's winter, which means it's frozen solid, except where things have been recently spilled or emitted. There are patches that glisten in the firelight. You don't ask what they are. That knowledge would require a follow-up action, like cleaning, and that is not something this era specializes in. Speaking of cleaning, hygiene, or rather, its absence. Let's begin with your hands. You clean them by wiping them on your tunic, which is the same tunic you sleep in, eat in, and use to wrestle stubborn goats. There is soap, technically, made from ash and fat and false hope, but it's reserved for very special occasions, like funerals, of the wealthy. For everyday use, there's water. Occasionally, when it isn't frozen, you dip your hands in a communal basin once a week, unless someone's already used it to wash a pig or a body. You do not scrub, you swish and you pray. Your body is never really clean. It's just less dirty in certain places. You have a smell, not a unique one. Everyone has it. It's the scent of wood smoke, sweat, damp wool, foot rot, onion breath, and mild despair. Some people find it comforting. You are not some people. Bathing is rare. In summer, it happens in rivers. In winter, it happens in dreams. There are steam baths if you live in a lucky settlement where you can sweat the filth out in a log cabin while hitting yourself with birch branches. It's a spiritual ritual, and also your only exfoliation method. But today is not that day. Today, your only bath is in judgment. Let's talk about your hair. It's matted, it's oily, it's doing things no hair should do. You own a comb, maybe bone or wood, but you share it with 6 other people and a horse. You remove lice manually, like a medieval ape, pinching them between your fingernails and flicking them into the fire with theatrical flair. The lice are constant, in your hair, in your clothes, in your bedding, if you dare to use that word. They are immune to cold, embarrassment, and soap. You could name them. Some do. It's easier to suffer when your parasites have personalities. Then there are fleas, a circus of tiny, blood-drinking gymnasts that perform nightly across your thighs and armpits. They bite in clusters, leaving itchy red constellations that map out your descent into madness. Scratching is both relief and performance art. And rats, you hear them more than see them. They scratch in the walls. They scamper across beams. Occasionally, one will sit and watch you like it's evaluating your worth. They are not afraid. They know you're equals. You both live off scraps, hide from the cold, and fear the outside world. You feel a kinship, and then you throw a spoon at it. Mice, also present, but cuter. They'll chew through your food stores and nesting straw. Sometimes you find their babies curled in a corner like pink raisins. You feel something like affection, and then step on one by accident and cry. Let's not forget the true household companions, the bedbugs. They live where you sleep, where you dream, and where you realize no dream is safe from reality. They leave you with swollen red welts and the sudden awareness that sleep is a form of violence now. All this, and we haven't even gotten to the livestock. Because you see, the house is not just for humans. No, there are animals, living, breathing, smelling. The cow lives inside, in the far end of the longhouse. The pig sleeps near the fire. Chickens roost in the rafters. This is not a farm. This is a zoo with tax responsibilities. And each animal brings its own fragrance, its own noises, and its own diseases. They are here for warmth. You don't mind until the cow farts. Then you mind deeply. The line between pet, pest, and meat is thin. The dog is your companion. The goat is your enemy. The cat is somewhere in between, depending on her mood and your toe warmth. But here's the twist. You're used to it. You don't cry when a louse crawls over your eyebrow. You flick it off and keep talking. You don't gag when you step in something that squelches. You just adjust your other foot and walk on. Your standards are like the temperature. Very, very low. You find peace in predictability. The walls may groan, the roof may leak, the vermin may scurry, but it is your scurry, and that's worth something. So you sit and breathe and scratch and adjust the moss plug in the wall to keep the draft out. And think briefly about modern things like air purifiers and vacuum cleaners and deodorant. Then you remember they don't exist and wouldn't be invented for centuries. Instead, you reach for a pine branch. You wave it around the room like a ceremonial wand. It doesn't cleanse the air, but it smells like less failure. And that is enough. Welcome home. You don't eat because you're hungry. You eat because not eating is worse. Hunger here isn't an occasional twinge between meetings or a word you use when your lunch is running 5 minutes late. Hunger is a house guest that moved in last autumn and won't stop sighing loudly from the corner. You've made peace with it. You even talk to it sometimes. But this morning, hunger is poking your ribs like it lost a bet. And you know what that means. Time for breakfast. You look at the hearth. A black iron pot rests above the low flames, suspended by a rusted hook that squeals when it moves. Inside, a substance. A shape-shifting, vaguely beige slop. It glistens with a thin skin of fat, broken up by the occasional bobbing oat or, God help us, a chunk of boiled turnip. It does not smell good. It smells like something you weren't supposed to find again. This is gruel, or something dangerously adjacent to it. And today, it's yesterday's gruel reheated. Possibly the day before's, depending on who stirred the pot last and how badly their eyes are failing. There may or may not be bits of rat in it, from either side of the food chain. You do not ask. You simply accept. Someone ladles a portion into a wooden bowl with a tilt and a shrug. There's no precision, no ceremony. Just plop, and now it's yours. Steam rises from the surface like it's trying to escape. You understand. You lift your spoon, hand-carved, half-burned at the end, slightly sticky, and stir the porridge. It resists. It has a texture somewhere between wet bread and poorly mixed cement. It jiggles. It sags. It makes a sound. A glurp, followed by a soft, wheezing blorp, like it's apologizing for existing. You eat anyway, because in the Viking Age, food doesn't nourish. It tests you. The first bite is warm. That's its best quality, temperature. After that, the flavor rolls in like a punishment. It's earthy, not in the poetic sense. In the literal dirt sense, like someone boiled sadness and left it in a root cellar. There is no salt. Salt is expensive. You had some once, last midsummer, and it made everything taste like it had aspirations. Now, everything tastes like it's been buried under anxiety and root vegetables. Because it has. The texture is inconsistent. One mouthful is grainy, another is chewy in a way that raises questions. You chew anyway, slowly. Because chewing gives your stomach time to build the necessary bravery. On rare holy days, there is a sliver of dried meat in the bowl. Today is not a holy day. Today is a if it's moving, hit it with a raw ask questions of land of day. So you stir again, find something vaguely fibrous and decide to call it cabbage. It's probably not. But breakfast is about hope. A child across the hearth gags. They're new. They still expect food to resemble joy. They will learn. The woman next to you dips her bread in the gruel. Not fresh bread. There is no such thing. This bread was baked a week ago, then left near the fire to become a defensive weapon. She soaks it until it surrenders, then chews slowly, looking at nothing in particular. This is breakfast conversation. Staring, chewing, resignation. Your bread, if you have any, is just flour and water and the soul of a rock. No yeast, no fluff, just flat, cracked slabs that shatter if dropped. You once saw one used to wedge a door shut during a storm. That was its tastiest function. You consider adding something to the gruel, maybe herbs? But herbs are gone for the winter. They sleep under the snow while you suffer above it. Spices? Hilarious. Those cost more than your entire family's worth. Butter? You laugh. Quietly. bitterly. Sometimes in the warmer months, the gruel is mixed with fermented whey, a liquid that tastes like milk's vengeful cousin. It adds tang, which is a polite way of saying foot. But in winter, you make do with melted snow and leftover meat water. You find a hair in your food. You remove it. You do not comment, because you remember the time someone found a toe. Breakfast was very quiet that day. If you're lucky, there's ale. Weak, warm, and cloudy. More of a liquid bread than a drink, but it's safer than the water. The well froze last week, and the last person who drank melted snow developed symptoms the healer called soul leaching. No one asked for a second opinion. You sip your ale. It tastes of wheat and depression, but it's yours. And here, that matters. Breakfast is eaten hunched over, elbows on knees, staring into bowls like prophets reading entrails. No one speaks. The fire crackles. A baby coughs. Someone in the corner farts with the authority of an elder. A chicken pecks at your boot, and you do not flinch. You're used to being judged. If you eat too quickly, your stomach complains. If you eat too slowly, someone takes your bowl. Everything is a test. A balancing act between digestion and defense. You finish the last spoonful, chasing it with your tongue because that was your oat, and you're not letting Bjorn have it. Bjorn is always watching. Bjorn counts your mouthfuls. You lick the spoon clean, no water for washing, just your tongue and the sleeve of your tunic, which by now is more seasoning than cloth. Your stomach now contains something. Not satisfaction, not fullness, just something. A vague heaviness that may turn into energy or regret. You won't know for a few hours. If you vomit, it wasn't food. If you don't, you call it a success. The bowls are licked clean, stacked by the fire. A dog sniffs them, licks them again, and curls up beside the soot with a burp. You envy the dog. He never asks what's in the stew. You feel a warmth now, not from the food, but from survival. You did it, you've eaten, you're no longer empty, just deeply, profoundly unimpressed. Now that something approximating food has been swallowed, and your internal organs have made cautious peace with it, it's time to prepare for the day. Or more accurately, to armor yourself in wool, regret, and several layers of poor choices against the malevolent entity that is a Viking winter. Your clothes wait for you like a passive-aggressive ex. They're not fresh, they're not dry, they're not even strictly clean, but they're yours, and they'll stick with you no matter how badly they treat you. You reach for your underlayer. Linen, if you're rich. Hemp, if you're honest. It's beige, or at least it was beige once, before time and bodily fluids gave it a mottled personality. It's stiff in places where it got wet and dried while hanging over the fire. You shake it out. A cloud of dust, hair, and maybe dignity puffs into the air. You pull it on, and it greets your skin like an angry sponge. Cold. Coarse. Slightly damp. The neck hole is too small. The sleeves are too long. It has no concept of tailoring, just the vague idea of human-shaped. Then comes the tunic. Wool. Heavy. It smells like old sheep and last week's fire. It's been worn every day for months and shows signs of trauma. A hole at the shoulder, a strange crust near the hem, and one sleeve that insists on being longer than the other, like it's reaching for something better. You shove it on anyway. It clings like a disappointed parent. Immediately, you begin to itch, not a little. Profoundly. Existential-aching wool is not the cozy sweater material you think of when sipping cocoa in front of your central heating. No, this is ancient wool, hand-spun, unlined, and imbued with the sharp, tactile memory of the sheep it came from. It scratches, it chafes, it fafes, it finds every inch of exposed skin and starts negotiations. You scratch under your arm. You scratch your chest. You try to ignore the sensation of something small and leggy moving near your shoulder blade. That's not the wool. That's Sven the flea. He's back. Next come the trousers. They have laces. Laces. Not the charming leather kind you see in fantasy films. These are more like sad strings that look like they've seen war. You wrestle your legs into the pants, hopping slightly, cursing under your breath like a man trying to escape a wet sack. The trousers are baggy at the top and tight at the bottom, like someone who started a design and gave up halfway. You tie the cords poorly. They unravel almost immediately. You tie them again, one stays, the other falls off in defeat. Underwear? Don't make me laugh. You tie a belt, leather, cracked, a bit too short. It creaks in protest. You tighten it to hold your trousers up, which also holds your self-respect together by the thinnest of margins. Then come the leg wraps. Oh, the leg wraps. 2 strips of wool, the same itchy, vengeful material as your tunic, wrapped from ankle to knee, like you're bracing for a very specific medieval injury. They serve multiple purposes: keeping your legs warm, protecting your pants, and demonstrating that you've lost all hope of a fast wardrobe routine. You wrap them tight, not too tight, or you'll lose circulation and have to gnaw a foot off by dinner time. You fasten them with, you guessed it, more string. You tuck the ends in and immediately feel one start to unravel. You sigh. It is tradition. On your feet, shoes. By shoes we mean wooden foot coffins. Leather uppers stitched together with boar sinew, nailed onto flat wooden soles. They fit like lies, tight in the wrong places, loose in the others. You slide your feet in, your toes curl, something crumbles inside the toe box. You assume it was a leaf. You hope. The shoes are lined with straw. Not for comfort, but to soak up the moisture that exists in all things. The straw has not been changed since last harvest. It is now part of the shoe, possibly part of your foot. You stand, your trousers sag, your leg wrap flops, your sleeve droops into your gruel bowl. You adjust, you continue. Because to be Viking dressed is not to be prepared. It is to be slightly restrained by textiles at all times. If you're leaving the house, and unfortunately you'll need your outerwear. A cloak, held with a brooch or a pin, depending on your social class and whether or not you stabbed someone last week. Your cloak is wool. Of course, everything is wool. It has absorbed the smell of your house, your livestock, and every bad decision you've made this season. It is warm, but also very, very heavy. Like emotional baggage you can wear. You drape it over your shoulders, it slides off. You reposition, it slides again. You pin it. It stabs you. Perfect. Headwear? If you're lucky, a felted wool cap shaped like a sad cone. It offers minimal warmth and maximum ridicule, but it keeps the lice in, and that's something. Gloves? If you've got them, they're fingerless. If you're rich, they're mittens with thumbs. If you're poor, you put your hands in your armpits and pretend this is normal. Your ensemble is now complete. A walking display of survival. An outfit built from discomfort, necessity, and fabric that itches with the intensity of divine punishment. You look in a polished bronze mirror, if one's available. You see a collection of layers shaped vaguely like a person, a pile of clothing attempting to declare sentience. Your eyes peer out like those of a frightened animal trapped under a wool avalanche. You are not fashionable, but you are dressed, sort of. And it only took 30 minutes, one argument with your leg wraps, and the loss of circulation in 2 toes. You step outside, the wind slaps you immediately. Your cloak flaps open, your tunic rides up. Snow finds the space between your shoe and your ankle like it was designed to cause suffering. You pull your garments tighter. You whisper a curse to Odin. The wind howls in agreement. You are ready for your day. And by ready, we mean clothed in loose approximation. You are outside now. The air doesn't greet you, it accosts you. It's cold in a way that isn't just about temperature. It's personal. Like winter itself holds a grudge. Your nose runs instantly, your cheeks go numb, and your eyelashes develop a thin layer of frost that makes you look marginally more majestic, but deeply, deeply uncomfortable. You look around. The village is quiet, not because it's peaceful, but because everyone is busy trying not to die. That's how most Viking days begin. Not with enthusiasm or hope, but with the dull, trudging acceptance that there's work to do, and it will neither end early nor go well. You start your chores. Not because you're inspired or ambitious or feel called to productivity. You work because if you don't, things fall apart. Literally. The thatched roof collapses, the fire dies, the livestock gets into the grain store and eats your winter supply. You do not work because you love your craft. You work because idleness is for corpses. First task, gather firewood. This seems easy. It is not. The woodpile is just a frozen heap of disappointment by the tree line, half covered in snow and half covered in the existential dread of knowing it's not enough to last the season. You grab your axe. It's dull. Of course it is. You meant to sharpen it 3 weeks ago, but then your cousin got worms and the goat broke the fence and there was a funeral. And honestly, you haven't felt warm since October, so here we are. You start chopping anyway. Each swing is met with stiff resistance. The logs don't split, they laugh. Your hands blister, your arms ache, you sweat, and then immediately freeze. There's no winning, just motion. Occasionally, the axe glances off the wood and into your shin. You pause, evaluate. Bleeding? No, just bruised. You carry on. Once you've split enough to justify breathing heavily, you haul the wood back to the longhouse in a sled that squeaks like it's haunted. It probably is. Everything here is either cursed or about to be. Task 2. Livestock. You feed the animals. The cow glares at you with ancient bovine judgment. She is not impressed with your choice of hay. You apologize. She farts. Relationship maintained. The chickens are easier. They scatter as you toss grain, then immediately try to peck your toes. One jumps on your shoulder and squawks directly into your ear. It is unclear whether this is affection or an assassination attempt. The pig is not hungry. He is plotting. You leave him alone. Now for fishing. Not leisurely, on a dock, with a cold drink and time to spare. No, this is ice fishing. In a frozen pond. With numb fingers and the strong likelihood that you will fall in and become a cautionary tale. You trek to the hole in the ice. Someone already used it this morning, but the ice has tried to seal itself again out of spite. You punch it with a stick, then you kneel, drop your line in, and wait, and wait, and wait. Eventually you catch something. A fish. Small, judging you. You unhook it. It flops. You look it in the eye. You whisper, "I'm sorry." Then you place it gently in your sack of other victims. Back home, it's time for repairs. The fence is broken. Again, because of course it is. The planks are warped. The nails are bent. The hammer is missing. You improvise with a rock. It works, sort of. The fence looks like it's been in a fight and lost, but it now stands in a vaguely vertical manner. You declare victory. Now it's midday. You are exhausted. But there's more. Textile work. Because you're not just a wood-chopping, fish-stabbing, fence-hammering Viking, you also have to mend things. You sit near the fire, squinting at a pile of socks that resemble collapsed rodents. You thread a needle with twine, curse when it frays, and spend 20 minutes sewing a patch onto a tunic that's 80% patches already. Your fingers bleed. The thread tangles. A child runs past and knocks your mending basket over. You do not scream. You merely reabsorb your rage into your spine. Then there's food prep, which is less cooking and more cutting frozen tubers with a dull blade while muttering about your enemies. You peel turnips. They mock you with every curl of frostbitten skin. You chop leeks. You do not cry. Your tear ducts have frozen shut. You take the scraps to the animals. The goat eats the bucket. Again, sundown is creeping in. You're not finished. Water needs hauling from the stream, except the stream is ice. So you break it with a stick, lower your bucket, pull it up, and realize it's frozen again by the time you get home. You reheat it. It takes an hour. You spill some. You swear. You are then asked to help with a roof repair. In winter, on a ladder made of ambition and twigs. You climb anyway. You adjust a patch of thatch. It falls apart in your hand. You replace it with something slightly less wet. The wind kicks up. You nearly fall off. You climb down, mentally aged by 10 years. Finally, you clean up the animal waste around the house with your hands. Because what else are hands for if not cradling the sins of domesticated creatures? You smell terrible. You look worse. But, and here's the twist, you're not special. Everyone does this. Every day. Forever. Until they die of a fever, an accident, or boredom. You didn't finish all the tasks. That's fine. No one ever does. There is no done here. Just less behind. And tomorrow, it starts again. You are sore. Deep, achy, behind the eyeballs sore. The kind of sore that feels like your soul got frostbite. You spent the day toiling, hauling, stitching, and questioning your life choices. And now, just as you begin to fantasize about collapsing near the fire with a warm cup of despair, your left molar gives a twinge. No, not today. It's subtle at first, a dull throb, then a sharp spike, like a tiny Viking with a rusty spear is jabbing you from the inside. You hold your jaw. You close your eyes. You consider if perhaps death would be more cost-effective than dental care. Because here's the truth. In this time and place, you do not see a doctor. You are seen by someone who has read a book once, owns a suspicious number of knives, and believes illness is caused by demons, bad humors, or a curse your great-grandfather earned by insulting a tree. Still, pain means action. And action means you call for the Leknir, your local healer. She arrives with the calm demeanor of someone who once tried to cure a nosebleed with burning sage and goat urine. She's old, hunched, wrapped in so many layers of cloth that she rustles when she walks. Her hands are knobby. Her breath smells like something that might have fermented inside a shoe. She sits beside you, peers into your mouth with one bloodshot eye, then mutters, "Yes, that tooth is angry." Angry. Not infected, not decayed. Angry, like it's a sentient creature that needs to be appeased. She rummages through her bag, a deer bladder, by the way, and pulls out a small bundle of wrapped herbs, a wooden spoon, and something that suspiciously resembles a sharpened nail. You ask no questions. You've learned. She begins by smearing a blackish paste onto your gums. It's a mix of crushed bark, moldy bread, and what might be squirrel droppings. "This will numb the pain," she says. It doesn't. Then she takes a mouthful of ale, swishes it around, and spits it into your mouth. It is blessed. It is also warm. You gag a little, but she shushes you like you're a fussy infant. Then comes the tapping. With the back of a spoon, she taps the offending tooth, slowly, as if coaxing a confession. You whimper. She nods gravely, very angry. Then she announces the obvious solution. It must come out. You consider running. You consider fighting. But you know, deep down, there are no alternatives. If you keep the tooth, it will rot. The infection will spread. Your face will swell to the size of a melon, and then, sometime next week, you will die in your sleep smelling vaguely of leeks. So, you sit. She calls for 2 strong men to hold you. This is not metaphorical. You are literally pinned to the bench as she retrieves her surgical tools. Pliers made of iron, blackened by fire, and possibly last used to remove a nail from a barn door. There is no anesthetic. There is no disinfectant. There is a stick, which you are instructed to bite down on, and the phrase, "Try not to scream too loud, it'll wake the goats." She inserts the iron into your mouth. You feel the cold metal scrape your gum. Then pressure. Then crunch. Then a pain so pure and cosmic it has its own weather system. You see stars. You see your ancestors. You see a better life in another timeline. With a wet crack, the tooth comes out. You don't cry. You sob quietly into your sleeve like a man who just met his god and got slapped. She holds up the tooth like a trophy. It is bloody. It is cracked. It is steaming slightly in the winter air. She wraps it in a bit of cloth and gives it to you. "Bury this far from the house," she says, "or the trolls will find it and curse your tongue." Of course. Wouldn't want a tongue curse on top of everything else. She packs your gum with moss and whispers a prayer to Thor. You lie back, dizzy, mouth bleeding, face swollen, wondering if perhaps you should have just let the angry tooth take you. But dentistry isn't the only medical horror on offer. There's also fevers, known as fire blood. When someone gets one, they're wrapped in wet rags and left near the hearth. They are not touched unless they start to scream. Then they are prayed over. If that doesn't work, they are taken outside, rubbed with snow, and beaten lightly with birch twigs. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes they die. Nobody knows why. There's childbirth, which is not a miracle, but a gamble. A loud, bloody gamble done in the dark on the floor while someone chews willow bark nearby and says she's strong. Probably. Midwives carry knives, not for cutting umbilical cords, but for fending off spirits. Sometimes from the baby. There's broken bones, which are reset using sticks and shouting. The healer spits on the wound. Then she binds it with cloth soaked in beer. You are told not to move. You move anyway. You hear the bone crack again. You are now cursed with a limp. There's rashes, blamed on bad air or moral failure. The cure? Ash paste, or bathing in sour milk under a full moon while chanting. You've done it. You still itch. And headaches? Ah, yes. Those are demons. They are treated with either a poultice of boiled herbs or a hole in your skull. Trepanation, the sacred and entirely unnecessary art of opening a hole in your head to let the evil spirits escape. Performed with a sharp rock and a strong stomach. Patients rarely survive. But when they do, everyone's very impressed. Do people believe this works? Absolutely. Because they've never seen it not work, at least not twice. You've seen a man try to cure diarrhea by stuffing his pants with garlic. You've seen a woman rub chicken fat on a broken toe and dance in a circle until she passed out. You've seen someone drill a hole in their ear to release earworms. It didn't work. But they believed. There are leeches, of course, for bloodletting. Because obviously the problem is always too much blood. If you have a headache, fever, or anxiety, they'll apply the leeches. If you're tired, sad, or just annoying at dinner, more leeches. You've developed a fondness for one. His name is Stig. He's very round. But when things get truly serious and someone begins coughing blood or sees spirits or smells bread that isn't there, the healer simply says, "This is beyond me," and starts preparing the burial plank. Because sometimes the best medicine is accepting you've lost, and then handing out onions and a song while you wait. You lie back now. Your mouth is full of blood and moss, your head spins, the fire crackles, your healer pats your arm and says, "You'll live." And somehow, you're not sure if that's good news. The sun is setting, if you can call that murky dimness a sunset. In Viking winter, the sun doesn't really set so much as give up. It slides halfway across the sky, coughs once, and sinks into the horizon like a guilty secret. The wind returns, that old, familiar companion, nudging at the walls of your longhouse like it's trying to borrow flour. It's not. It's here to remind you that warmth is conditional, and survival is a subscription service you're always one missed meal away from canceling. And speaking of meals, it's time to eat. Again, you've burned thousands of calories today doing things no one in the modern world would do without signing a waiver. Hauling logs, fighting livestock, bleeding out of your mouth in the name of medieval dentistry. And now, finally, it's time to reward yourself with an evening meal. Ha, reward, that's adorable. No, my friend. It's time to suffer again. The fire has been revived and is now working hard, a small, loyal flame trying its best, despite the fact that it's fed with damp wood and bad intentions. Above it hangs the same iron pot from breakfast. It's not just a pot. It's a cauldron of culinary despair. It never truly gets cleaned, just topped off. A bubbling, unholy stew of leftovers, root vegetables, animal bits, and hope gone sour. This is the evening gruel. And oh, how it evolves. Let's break down the ingredients. Base, water. Lots of water. Thin, grayish with hints of soot and disappointment. Starch. Barley or oats, possibly turnips if someone didn't hoard them under their bed. Protein. A hunk of dried fish, preserved in salt and a thin film of defiance. Or maybe dried mutton, possibly rat. Again, you do not ask. Extras. Onion skins, the chewy rind of a cheese long dead, and a bone from something that no longer requires it. Seasoning. The chef's sleeve. The stew is thick. Not in a rich, creamy way, in a suspiciously viscous way. You stir it with a long wooden ladle that's seen more action than your local warband. It scrapes the bottom, dislodging bits that haven't moved since last week. You ladle some into a wooden bowl and watch as a layer of scum forms on top like it's trying to protect you. You ignore it. You blow gently, but it doesn't cool. Nothing in this era cools. It goes from molten lava to ice sculpture without warning. You take a bite. It is warm, chewy, salty? No, that's just your tears. You chew, and chew and chew. There's a strip of meat in there, or something meat adjacent, and it clings to your molars like it doesn't want to leave. You tear it apart with the precision of someone who no longer feels joy. It tastes like something that once knew flavor in a past life. You swallow. The lump goes down reluctantly. You chase it with ale. Not wine, not mead. Ale. Weak, foamy, room temperature. Brewed in a barrel that may have once housed a corpse. It's technically nutritious. It also tastes like someone strained bread through a sweaty tunic. You sip. It burns a little. That's the good part. If you're one of the lucky ones, someone in the household had enough foresight to smoke meat last season. Not smoke in the sense of barbecue. Hey, more like hang over a fire until it becomes jerky and also possibly fireproof. You saw a piece once used as a shoe insert. Tonight, you have a strip of that meat. It's blackened at the edges and curls like a scroll. You gnaw on it until your jaw pops. You do not stop. This is the best thing you will eat until the snow melts. You look around. Others are eating, slowly, with the dead-eyed determination of people who know what happens when you skip meals. The old man in the corner eats with his hands. The child next to you drinks broth with both palms like a raccoon. The goat eyes the pot. You eye the goat. At the center of the room, a woman spoons something lumpy onto flatbread. It collapses. The bread surrenders. This is dinner. And yet, it could be worse. It has been worse. Let's talk about preservation, because food doesn't grow in Viking winter. Nothing grows. Everything is dead, asleep, frozen mid-scream. So what you eat now is what you managed to save from last fall. That means salted fish, stiff as planks, usually cod, sometimes not. Fermented shark, if you're Icelandic and hate your taste buds. Cured meats, preserved with more salt than your yearly tears. Lutefisk, which is fish soaked in lye and then water until it achieves the consistency of haunted jelly. Hard cheese, so hard it requires a knife, a hammer, and prayer. You store food in pits, in barrels, or in smokehouses. You bury it, hang it, rub it with fat, or dunk it in brine. You fight mold. You fight rats. You fight your own will to live when the fermented cabbage starts to smell like despair and old shoes. Some years, there is famine, a bad harvest, a long winter. Too many mouths and not enough oats. People start eating bark, soup made from pine needles, bread baked with sawdust. That's not an exaggeration. That's survival. You've tasted that bread. It scratches your throat like it holds a grudge. Tonight isn't a famine night, just an ordinary misery night, which honestly feels like luxury. You finish your bowl, scrape it clean with your thumb, lick the edge. You're not full, but you're no longer empty. That's the line you toe every day. One mouthful above starvation, one spoonful away from collapse. You pass your bowl to a child to lick. They do so with the enthusiasm of someone tasting the concept of dinner. A dog whines, you toss it a rind. It swallows without chewing. Someone burps, someone farts, someone thanks the gods. You do not. You are not sure this meal was divine, you are sure it was real. You crawl closer to the fire, your stomach groans, not in protest, in confusion. The food was food, and for now, that's enough. You are sitting by the fire now, full of something that may have technically been food. Wrapped in wool that still itches, sipping ale that tastes like someone strained it through regret. You are tired. Not in the modern I could use a nap way, but in the full-body ancestral fatigue that comes from doing 10 hours of labor to remain precisely one step ahead of starvation and frostbite. And as the fire crackles, casting long, twitching shadows against the timber walls, you begin to feel it, the watching. It's not your neighbors, though they are, in fact, watching you. It's not the rats in the rafters, though they are also watching you. It's everything. The air, the floor, the bones hanging over the door, the strange lump in your stew you decided not to identify. You are being observed, not by a person, but by the unseen order of things. The gods, maybe. The spirits of the land, the dead, whose opinions still seem to carry more weight than your current pulse. Because in Viking winter, you're never truly alone. You're always within the gaze of something invisible, ancient, and deeply judgmental. Let's talk about belief. You live in a world where thunder has a name, and it's Thor. He rides in a chariot pulled by goats and hits things with a hammer. This is not myth. This is weather forecasting. The ocean, that's a Gear's realm, a moody, salt-crusted deity who either gives you fish or swallows your boat, depending on his temperament and how recently you've sacrificed anything. The wind? Could be a god, could be a curse, could be both. Nothing happens without a reason, and none of those reasons are science. Your cousin gets sick. She angered a land spirit by urinating near a burial mound. A goat gives birth to twins. Someone left a knife unsheathed during a full moon, and now the fertility runes are confused. Your stew curdles 3 days in a row? Witchcraft, obviously. Superstition here isn't quaint. It isn't a charming cultural detail. It is infrastructure. It explains illness, misfortune, fertility, crop yield, the weather, your missing socks, all of it. There are rules. You follow them, or bad things happen, and you do not want to be the person blamed when the village's bread rises wrong. Let's review just a few of the rules you obey without question. Never say the names of the dead after sundown. They'll come back, and they won't be polite. Never whistle indoors. It attracts trickster spirits, or wolves, or worse, an unwanted visitor from the neighboring village. Never braid your hair leftward. It invites chaos. Rightward braids only. Otherwise, it's your fault if someone loses a finger tomorrow. Always thank your tools before putting them away, especially the axe. The axe remembers. And of course, the omens. Crows flying east? Good. Crows flying west? Bad. Crows circling overhead? Prepare a burial shroud. Spilling ale on the hearthstone? Disaster. Breaking a bowl predicts a guest or a fight, possibly both. You dream of fire? Fertility. You dream of snow? Death. You dream of teeth? That's very bad. The healer interprets dreams for a piece of dried fruit. You give her a shriveled plum. She tells you you're doomed. You nod. You already knew. Religion, of course, overlays all of this like a scratchy blanket that doesn't cover your feet. The gods are everywhere, in the trees, the sky, your neighbor's barn, and possibly in your porridge if you stirred counterclockwise. They require respect, offerings, the occasional blood sacrifice, and constant reassurance that you are not slacking. You wear a small hammer around your neck. Not just fashion, it's insurance, like wearing a thunderbolt so Thor knows you're on his side. Your friend once forgot his. A lightning bolt hit his hut. Coincidence? No such thing. You keep your idols carved neatly and placed respectfully. Thor, Odin, Freya, Freyr. Small wooden figures that absorb your muttered prayers like sponges. You light a candle. You offer bread. You don't know if they hear you, but if they do and you don't offer something, oh, then you'll know. The gods do not forgive. They punish, they curse, they test, they send bad harvests, bad dreams, bad smells, they send winter. Worse than the gods, though, are your neighbors. Because while the gods may be watching from Asgard, your neighbors are watching from 4 feet away, and they talk. They see if you skip ritual. They notice if your child sneezes during prayer. They remember if your ox fell sick after you insulted the old woman who talks to trees. Community surveillance here isn't a byproduct. It's a primary feature. There is no privacy. Everyone knows who made the weak ale. Everyone knows who muttered during the funeral rites. Everyone knows who didn't sacrifice their best chicken during the lunar festival. You're constantly judged, not just by your gods, your ancestors, and your lice, but by the old woman with 3 teeth who remembers everything and never blinks. This means one thing. You perform piety. Loudly. You cross yourself at the right moment. You murmur the right phrases. You feed the idols with stale bread and pray like it's a sport. You pretend to see omens in the smoke, even when all you see is smoke. Because the moment you hesitate, the moment you slip, someone will whisper that you're inviting chaos. Or worse, you're in league with the spirits of the forest. No one survives that kind of gossip. Superstition is not optional. It is the thread that keeps everyone from going feral. You believe, or you pretend to. You don't question the blood on the stone altar. You don't ask why the dog barked at the moon 3 nights in a row. You don't argue when the healer tells you to burn 3 hairs and bury a chicken foot under the elder tree. You just do it. Because what if it works? What if this whole frozen, moldy, parasite-riddled life is only hanging together because of your ritual, your repetition, your relentless performance of sacred nonsense? What if not doing it is the one thing the gods have been waiting for? You don't risk it. You offer your thanks. You bless your spoon. You spit over your shoulder before stepping out the door. You are not religious, you are terrified. And in this world, that's basically the same thing. The work is done for now. The animals are fed, the tools are stacked, the soup is boiling, the lice are back to their evening waltz along your collarbone. Your back aches, your knees feel like they've been hit with a bag of small rocks, and your soul has entered what scholars centuries from now will call burnout. Which means it's time for something truly radical in Viking winter. Leisure. Or the approximation of it. You see, free time is not exactly a thing. Time is not freed. It is borrowed, rented, maybe stolen if no one's looking. And you don't so much relax as you pause until the next crisis. But when those rare pauses occur, when the gods aren't actively smiting someone and your intestines aren't twisting from spoiled turnips, that's when the real party starts. And by party, we mean stick throwing and gossip. Let's begin with the games. Outside the longhouse, assuming the weather isn't trying to skin your face with sleet, people gather for sports. No, not sports with rules and uniforms. Sports like, I throw this stick and you try to avoid getting concussed. This is Nat Liker, the Viking ball game, a chaotic blend of rugby, brawling, and property damage. It involves a ball, sort of, bats or sticks, also sort of, and no real boundary markers. The goal? Unknown. The injuries? Frequent. The entertainment? Oh, it's endless. You once played. You now limp. If you're not outdoors, there are indoor games, mostly involving bones, dice made from sheep knuckles. You roll them to pass the time and predict the future. Or gamble, or accuse each other of cheating and start a fight. Again, entertainment. Then there's storytelling. This is peak leisure, the social media of the Viking Age. You sit around the hearth, the fire crackles, the shadows lean in like eavesdropping ghosts, and someone, usually an elder with a voice like cracked leather, begins to spin a tale. Not a short one. These stories are epic, full of gods, giants, curses, blood feuds, ill-timed blizzards, and someone named Bjorn who always dies in a spectacularly avoidable way. You know the endings. You've heard them dozens of times. Doesn't matter. You listen. Because stories are survival. They're instruction manuals disguised as drama. They teach you who you are, what matters, and why you should never trust a one-eyed stranger with glowing runes. Sometimes there are songs, sung in deep nasal tones accompanied by a harp or bone flute or someone just hitting a pot with a spoon. The lyrics are about great battles, tragic love, and the importance of not eating glowing mushrooms. And sometimes there is fun. Actual fun. Like drinking contests. You pass around horns of ale or mead, each participant trying to drink more than the last without falling into the fire. The goal is to remain upright, speak in complete sentences, and insult the neighboring village in increasingly poetic terms. Insults are a game unto themselves. Viking poetry, flighting, is structured verbal combat. Rhyming curses, poetic jabs, and elaborate comparisons of someone's honor to fish droppings. If you lose, your reputation takes a hit. If you win, people nod with respect and say, he really told him his grandmother sleeps with goats. Sometimes, these contests go too far. Which brings us to law. There are no jails here. There are no police. The law is spoken, memorized, and enforced by consensus and the occasional axe. The local chieftain holds things, public assemblies where disputes are aired, punishments are doled out, and everyone gets to yell. You've been to a thing. It's part court case, part town hall, part festival, part try not to get stabbed in front of the children. People bring grievances. He stole my sheep. She cursed my ale. Their chicken insulted my wife. There are judges, usually respected elders with good memories and bad teeth. They listen, they grumble, they consult the laws, which are recited, not written. Someone stands up and speaks for 20 minutes without blinking. The verdicts? Creative. Minor theft. You return the goods. You also give the victim a gift. If the gift sucks, the victim is allowed to punch you. Major theft. You lose a hand or a nose or something you were fond of. Insults. If proven, you must apologize. Publicly. In verse. Adultery. Complicated. If you're male, it's a slap on the wrist. If you're female, it's exile. Unless you cry. Then it's exile with sympathy. Murder. Pay a fine. Yes, a fine. Unless the family demands blood. Then it's messy. If a crime is serious enough or the person is truly loathed, they are declared outlaw. This is not symbolic. It means anyone can kill them on sight, and they usually do. Justice in Viking times is both immediate and poetic. People don't forget, and they love a good story. Which brings us back to gossip, because when you're not working, praying, or fighting, you're talking about other people's mistakes. Who married whom? Who didn't sacrifice during the solstice? Whose stew keeps turning green? Whose child might not look entirely like their father? This is not idle chatter. This is survival. Gossip teaches you who's powerful, who's vulnerable, and who not to lend your cloak to. It spreads faster than illness and lasts longer than memory. It happens around the fire, while mending clothes, while sharpening tools, while digging graves. Yes, even during funerals, especially during funerals. You once overheard someone say she mourns too hard, she must be guilty. That was about you. You're still not sure of what. Finally, there's festivals. Roughly 6 per year, timed with the agricultural calendar and/or suspicious celestial movements. They involve feasting, using the last of your winter stores, dancing, awkward shuffling in layers, sacrifices, animal, usually, and the hope that the gods are paying attention and haven't moved on to a more obedient village. During these festivals, people pretend to be happy. They laugh, they flirt, they wear garlands and paint their faces with ashes and berries. You once kissed someone under the harvest moon. They tasted like onions. It was glorious. But eventually, the music stops, the mead runs out, someone gets punched, and it's back to normal, back to frostbitten fingers, back to itchy wool, back to the quiet grind of not dying. But for a brief, flickering moment, you played, you sang, you smiled, and it almost felt like something more than survival. You sit near the fire, watching the smoke rise like a tired ghost, and you catch yourself thinking something dangerously modern. Something like, maybe I'll fall in love one day. No, you won't. Not here. Not in Viking winter. Not in this drafty longhouse where the scent of fermented cabbage hangs heavy in the air and privacy is something only trees get when no one's chopping them down. You don't fall in love. You are assigned to love. Welcome to the Viking romance economy, a thrilling marketplace of dowries, livestock negotiations, and barely repressed misery. It begins, not with a crush or a coy glance across the mead hall, but with land, or goats, or the lack thereof. Marriage is not about compatibility, or attraction, or emotional stability. It is about consolidating property and avoiding starvation. If someone owns 2 pigs and you own 1 miserable field of barley, congratulations, you're now betrothed. May your union be as successful as your last attempt at fermenting cabbage. You are a commodity, a line item, a moving part in someone else's long-term agricultural strategy. If you're a man, your worth is measured in land, strength, and how many cows you have not yet let die. If you're a woman, your worth is measured in childbearing potential, weaving skill, and how well you can survive being married to a man who bathes annually and thinks compliments are for weaklings. Courtship rituals are minimal. There's no hand-holding, no candlelit dinners. There is a conversation, likely between your father and another man, while you sit in the corner pretending not to eavesdrop on your own future. They will discuss how many sheep your uterus is worth. Then someone nods and boom, you're engaged. If you're lucky, you get to meet your future spouse before the wedding. If you're very lucky, they have at least half their teeth. Either way, you will get married. And by married, we mean publicly claimed. The wedding is an event, a loud, boozy, chaotic one. There is ale, there is shouting, there is ritualized gift-giving, which mostly involves handing over weapons, blankets, and the occasional chicken like it's a particularly aggressive version of Secret Santa. You are dressed in your finest wool, which is to say, the tunic with the fewest holes. If you're a woman, your hair is braided, your eyes are lined with charcoal, and someone has painted your cheeks with berry juice that tastes faintly of mold. If you're a man, you've attempted to wash your face with snow and are wearing a belt that has only mild bloodstains. There's a ceremony involving oaths, sometimes a symbolic sword, and often a communal chant that sounds vaguely like people trying to exorcise a ghost through interpretive grunting. Then the marriage is sealed in the most unromantic way possible, by moving in together and hoping no one dies before spring. Romantic gestures? Occasionally someone composes a love poem, usually full of metaphors about axes, weather, or how your hair reminds them of a haystack in a good harvest year. But more often, affection is shown through practical means. I let you have the slightly less crusty end of the bread loaf. I did not blame you for the goat getting into the mead. I helped dig a latrine trench even though it wasn't my week. That's love, that's passion, that's commitment. Sex, of course, happens, regularly, loudly, behind a curtain if you're lucky, near the hearth if you're not. Privacy is rare, so most people just get on with it and pretend the child chewing on stale bread 3 feet away isn't watching. Consent is fluid, by which we mean legally complicated, ethically questionable, and often determined by property rights. Infidelity? Oh, that's a whole thing. If a woman cheats, she can be divorced, punished, or banished. If a man cheats, it's only frowned upon if he's caught bragging about it. The double standard is alive and well, and it smells like goat sweat. But let's say, just for fun, that somehow affection blooms. That between the mud, the frostbite, and the constant threat of dying from soup, you and your spouse actually like each other. What then? You share more chores. You sit closer at night. You make each other laugh with mildly inappropriate jokes about the local healer's love life. And when the world is too much, when the snow howls like a banshee and the food is down to old cheese and silent prayers, you curl up together beneath a blanket made of itchy wool and unrealistic expectations and whisper things like, "At least we still have both eyes." Romance, Viking style. But even that doesn't last forever, because marriage, like everything else, is a contract. And contracts can be broken. Vikings were surprisingly progressive about divorce. Either partner could end the marriage. All it took was announcing the separation in front of witnesses and dividing the assets, meaning the furniture, the livestock, and occasionally the children, who may or may not notice. There's even a formal ritual for it. Stand at the threshold of the house and declare loudly that you are parting ways. Simple. Effective. No alimony, but also no closure. So you live on, maybe with someone new, maybe alone, maybe surrounded by goats who understand you better than your former spouse ever did. In any case, love is not the point. Survival is. So you do your chores, you raise your children, you share the bed, the stew, the lice, and if someone brings you a fish that isn't rotten, that's love. The morning starts early for a child, which is to say, it doesn't start at all, because it never really ended. There is no structured bedtime, no warm baths and lullabies, no magical hour where someone whispers, "It's okay now, just rest." You sleep when the work pauses. You wake when it resumes. And in Viking winter, children are not children. They are tiny, bony-limbed adults in training, with the job descriptions and spinal curvature to match. You watch as a girl, maybe 5 winters old, stomps across the longhouse barefoot, her hair tangled into a shape not found in nature. She's carrying a bundle of firewood, nearly as big as her entire torso. She drops it beside the hearth with a grunt, wipes her nose on her sleeve, then kicks her younger brother for being in the way. Affection. Viking style. Childhood in this time period is less a phase and more a temporary softness that gets sandpapered away by responsibility. There are no toys unless you count sticks, bones, or the occasional blessed scrap of carved wood. There are no playdates. There is no, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" because the answer is always, alive. If you're born in this era, and statistically that's a 50-50 gamble with death before age 5, you're immediately placed into a high-stakes relay race where the baton is malnutrition and everyone is barefoot. Your first task is not to die. If you achieve that by age 3, your reward is chores. Fetch this. Stir that. Don't eat the lye soap. Herd the goats. Try not to get trampled by the pigs. You'll be praised for completing tasks and ignored for having feelings. By 5 or 6, you're expected to contribute. That means hauling water, grinding grain, feeding animals, sweeping the floor with a bundle of reeds that has more decorative ambition than cleaning ability, and occasionally sitting very still while an adult ties you to a post so they can go mend the roof without you wandering into the fjord. You are told stories, not of dragons and rainbows, but of freezing to death, of dishonor, of why you never ever leave the house without checking for wolves. If you cry, you are told that crying attracts trolls. If you ask why the world is cold and dark and full of lice, you are told it's always been this way, and also, get back to scrubbing the pig trough. Education? That's adorable. If you're the child of a chieftain or a wealthy merchant, you might learn to read runes, or count sheep without needing to poke them. But most children learn by doing, by mimicking adults, being yelled at, or nearly dying in ways that eventually improve your technique. You learn to tell which mushrooms are poison by watching which uncle foams at the mouth. You learn how to sharpen a knife by cutting yourself at least twice. You learn the words for fire, wolf, and run before you learn your own birthday. Your toys, if you're lucky, include a carved horse with one leg missing, a pouch of small bones used like dice or thrown at siblings, a doll made from cloth and hay that stares at you with button eyes and emotional baggage. Sometimes you play raid, which involves chasing each other with sticks and yelling pretend curses. Sometimes you play bury the cousin, which is exactly what it sounds like and requires an adult to intervene before things get too real. By 10, your job title might include goatherd, fisher's assistant, or potentially betrothed. You are not a child. You are a unit of labor in a very cold economy. You help your mother stir the pot and taste the gruel for mold. You help your father repair the fence while being told stories about the time he nearly died fighting a bear. You help your siblings by occasionally not hitting them. Family love is shown in bruises and shared bread crusts. You've seen death, up close. A baby brother who didn't make it through his first winter. A friend who fell through the ice. An elder who coughed himself into the grave. You do not have a therapist. You have chores. Chores heal all things, apparently. And when it comes to discipline, corporal punishment is standard. A smack on the head, a sharp word, a day without the good part of the stew. You learn quickly, you internalize even faster, you dream rarely. When you do, it's about not being cold, or having your own tunic instead of sharing one with your cousin, or maybe just eating something that still had a heartbeat in the same week you consumed it. Romance, too, finds you early. If you're a girl, your value is tracked in dowry and fertility potential. People begin eyeing you around 12. Not in a "what a bright young mind" way, in a "how many goats is she worth" kind of way. You're taught how to spin, sew, grind grain, and accept your fate with minimal complaint. If you're a boy, you're expected to grow strong, lift things, kill things, hide your fear. And if you cry too loud when you break a toe, someone will laugh and say you'll never be a warrior with lungs like that. You're told that life is hard, but you don't need to be told. You've been living it. You know what cold feels like in the bones of your fingers. You know what hunger tastes like at the back of your throat. You know what it means to be a child with responsibilities, not dreams. And yet, you laugh. Sometimes. You laugh when the goat falls off the rock and lands on its side like a pancake. You laugh when the storyteller says Odin once disguised himself as a woman and still won the insult contest. You laugh when someone farts so loudly during the harvest festival that the healer drops her herbs. You laugh because laughter is the only thing you can do without tools. At night, you lie in the longhouse, curled beside siblings and straw, scratching at flea bites and listening to the wind. You do not know the word childhood, but you know what it means to be small and cold and needed. And in this world, that's as close as you'll ever get. You wake up to a warm, wet tongue dragging across your cheek. It is not your spouse, it's the dog. Probably. You hope. Welcome to another charming detail of Viking winter, the complete lack of distinction between animal companion, domestic nuisance, and pestilential threat. In this world, if it breathes and doesn't immediately try to kill you, it can live in your house, possibly in your bed, possibly on your face. There are no kennels, there are no litter boxes. There is just you, the animals, and a silent agreement that nobody makes eye contact when someone relieves themselves indoors. Let's begin with the dog. You do not own the dog. The dog tolerates you. She guards the livestock. She eats scraps. She sometimes answers to her name, which is either Freya or, "Hey, you stop that." She sleeps near the fire, except when you get up to pee and find her curled exactly where your feet were, snoring softly with one eye open. She is not cuddly. She does not perform tricks. She does not wear a sweater. She bites strangers. She bites you sometimes, but only playfully. You hope. You feed her bones and thank her for not howling at the moon last night, which, as everyone knows, would summon the restless dead. She wags her tail once and then vomits up something furry onto your foot. Affection. There is also the cat, a half-feral mouser who stares at you like you're an idiot, and she knows it. You didn't name her. She named herself. Probably something in Old Norse that translates roughly to shed-dwelling empress of doom. She keeps the mice at bay, mostly. She kills rats when she feels like it, or when someone gives her a fish head as tribute. She walks along the rafters like a god surveying her domain, and if she deigns to curl up in your lap, you sit there until you lose circulation. Cats are sacred, not in a spiritual way, in a practical way. Kill a cat and your house is cursed. The rats will overrun it, your grain will vanish, and your neighbors will look at you like you personally offended Thor. Rats, of course, are a given. There is no rat problem. There are just rats. They live in the walls, in the grain bins, in your shoes if you forget to check. They are the background music of your life, scratching, squeaking, occasionally thumping as they fall from the rafters and land in your soup. You name them out of necessity, not sentimentality. Scully lives near the hearth and only steals dried fish. Lut is missing a leg and leaves tiny cursed footprints on the floor. Avind has learned how to open the food jar. You hate them, but you also grudgingly respect them, because they too are survivors. Then there are the chickens, the most chaotic creatures ever to grace a longhouse. Loud, peckish, unpredictable. They roost in the rafters. They defecate with military precision. They lay eggs in places you only find 3 weeks later when something smells wrong. A rooster once bit you on the ankle and then strutted away like he'd won a duel. You still carry that shame. The goat is a menace. Not in the metaphorical sense. Literally a menace. He chews through rope, headbutts the door, and eats socks. He escaped once, wandered into the healer's hut, and consumed half a basket of herbs before vomiting in the fire pit. The village still talks about it. You tried to tether him once. He looked at you, untied the rope with his teeth, and left. The goat wins. Always. Then there are the animals who aren't quite pets and not quite wild. The ferret, kept for rodent control, who occasionally bites your thumb and disappears for days. The geese, who double as an alarm system and an ongoing source of trauma. The horse, who lives outside, hates you, and is only nice to the neighbor's child. And the cow, who resides inside during winter. A literal roommate with 4 stomachs and no concept of personal space. You learn to live around them, to sleep beside them, to navigate the manure like a respectful guest in a sacred labyrinth of droppings. You do not complain when the dog snores. You do not flinch when the cat dismembers a rat mid-dinner. You do not scream when a mouse skitters across your foot at 3 a.m. You just nod and say, "He's early tonight." Because animals are not separate. They are everywhere. They are part of the heat source. They are part of the mess. They are part of your ecosystem of suffering and survival. And they are not the worst part. No, the worst part is the vermin that aren't pets and don't care for your feelings. Lice live in your hair. You pick them out during quiet moments and flick them into the fire like tiny sacrifices to cleanliness. Fleas live in your bedding. You scratch until you bleed and blame it on the spirits because blaming the truth would just make you sad. Bedbugs feast on your ankles. Ticks bury themselves in places you cannot scratch in public. And yet, there is a strange peace to it all. A rhythm. The dog farts. The rooster crows. The rat chews a hole in the grain bin. The cat yawns. You scratch. And the cycle continues. You are not alone. Not ever. Even in your worst, most shivering, most despair-filled nights, there is always something breathing next to you. Sometimes it's human. Sometimes it has fur. Sometimes you're not sure. But it doesn't matter. Because in Viking winter, companionship isn't chosen, it just is. You step outside, and the first thing you think is, the sky wants me dead. It's not a poetic metaphor. It's not your seasonal depression talking. It's the actual physical reality of Viking winter. The air has edges. The wind isn't moving through you. It's biting you, gnawing at the fibers of your wool cloak like a starving ghost. Your breath freezes the moment it leaves your mouth and immediately regrets doing so. And it's only midday. Let's talk about the climate, shall we? This isn't just cold. It's pre-global warming cold. This is Little Ice Age adjacent, when winters could last longer than a grudge and summers were just shorter, wetter winters with better lighting. The weather here doesn't change. It worsens. It doesn't act up. It acts with malicious intent. And in this age, you don't have Doppler radar, or thermometers, or even a guy shouting storm incoming from a tower. You just walk outside, taste the air, and mutter, "That feels like snow," with a side of regret. The wind is your most consistent enemy. Not just gusty, not breezy. Wind here is weaponized. It howls, not metaphorically. It literally howls, through the cracks in your longhouse walls, through the seams of your tunic, through the spaces between your ribs where hope used to live. It gets inside you. You tie your cloak tighter. It flaps defiantly. You pull your hood up. It blows off like it owes the wind money. You squint into the distance and see the faint shimmer of snow approaching. Not falling gently, but advancing like a battalion of frozen knives, ready to exfoliate you down to your bad decisions. And snow? It doesn't fall prettily in this world. It falls sideways. It clumps in your eyebrows. It sneaks into your shoes. It accumulates in places you thought were safe, like under your armpits or inside your soul. It hides things. Paths, tools, outhouse doors, your cousin Helga. We found her, eventually. You try to shovel it, but your shovel is a splintery plank attached to a crooked stick. And every time you dig, the wind replaces what you moved with more snow, plus a whisper that says, "This is your life now." Then there's ice. Everywhere. Underfoot. On your tools. Coating your livestock in a glittering sheen of misery. You fall. Repeatedly. You fall with grace. You fall with curses. You fall so often the goats have developed opinions on your technique. Frost creeps into your home, into your joints, into your relationships. You've learned to recognize frostbite by color. Pale white, still reversible. Blue, you have a few hours. Black, say goodbye to that toe and give it a Viking name. You've seen people lose fingers for the crime of fetching water too slowly. You've seen a man lose his nose because he fell asleep in a snowdrift while slightly drunk on warm ale. You've seen someone attempt to warm their feet too fast near the fire and watched blisters the size of walnuts bloom like horror flowers. There is no proper clothing. There is only wool and willpower. Your cloak is damp. Your socks are more concept than fabric. Your mittens are animal hide stitched together with whatever was lying around, sinew, thread, hope. And even good weather is suspicious. A sudden sunny day? Don't trust it. That's thaw season, where the snow turns to slush, your roof leaks like it's confessing a crime, and everything smells like rot. Mud claims everything: shoes, sleds, children. It's not uncommon to see a small person sink thigh-deep and require excavation. People die of exposure indoors during thaw. Wet clothes, cold nights, lungs that just give up. But wait, it gets worse. Storms, blizzards roll in like drunken gods with axes. The sky turns gray, then white, then obliterates visibility entirely. You walk a few feet and suddenly don't know where you are. The snow screams, you scream back. No one hears you over the wind and their own screaming goats. People die within meters of their own doors. Found in spring, curled like frozen commas, one hand reaching for a latch they never found. You tie ropes from the longhouse to the outhouse so you don't get lost walking to pee. You've tried peeing inside. That didn't go well. Thunderstorms are rare, but when they hit, you're convinced Thor is in a mood. Thunder shakes your bones. Lightning strikes trees. Once it struck Sven's cow. Sven hasn't spoken since. The sky in general is not your friend. Sometimes it pretends to be. You look up, oh, the stars, the aurora, the swirling colors of night. Beautiful. Until you realize your nose is frozen solid and you're locked in place by your own snot. And in summer, when the ice finally retreats and the world reverts to squelching, buggy swamp, then it rains. For weeks, everything molds, including you. The smoke doesn't rise, it hovers. Your longhouse smells like mushrooms, goat farts, and regret. You're damp. Again, always. Still, there's something strangely reliable about it all. You know what to expect, you know the signs. You know when the wind changes, it's time to reinforce the roof and apologize to the gods. Just in case. You fear the sky, but you also understand it. And on the rare day when it's calm, when the frost glitters like crushed glass and the wind forgets to scream, you walk outside and almost feel not warm, but not cursed either. You breathe. It steams gently in the air. The clouds drift. You squint at the distant sun like it's a familiar stranger. And then the rooster keels over because the snow just started again. Figures. The fire burns low now. Not out. Not yet. But low, tired flames looking half-heartedly at the logs, the embers crackling like old knees in cold weather. The longhouse is quiet, or at least the Viking version of it. Low murmurs, occasional snoring, one goat chewing loudly in its sleep, and the faint, rhythmic scratching of someone attempting to remove a flea from their shin with a knife. You sit on your stool, wrapped in every layer you own. The wool blanket pulled over your shoulders like a cloak of damp, itchy survival. Your legs are heavy, your hands are cracked, your lips are chapped from a wind that speaks only in threats. And as the sky outside deepens from gray to soot black, the stillness brings with it the thing no Viking ever truly forgets. Death. She lives here too, in the bones beneath the floorboards, in the moss-stuffed walls, in the air that hovers above the hearth like a tired ghost, unsure if it's already been prayed for. She isn't a stranger, she's a neighbor. And tonight, as you pull the blanket tighter, you remember, someone died last week. Of what? No one knows. They coughed, then stopped. That was the whole arc. They said it was the blood chill, or lung rot, or a hex, because they stepped backward over the threshold during the moon's wrong phase. You watched the body burn on the funeral pyre, the smoke curling into the sky with the last of their memories. Someone sang. Someone wept. Someone coughed and looked worried. Because death never travels alone. She brings disease like a dinner guest with bad breath and worse manners. The sicknesses here have names you do not understand and symptoms you understand far too well. The gut curse. Diarrhea so violent it becomes a community event. Bone fire. Fevers that melt you from the inside. Blood cough. Starts small, ends in blood, and occasionally a funeral. The shaking. Spasms, chills, and whispered prayers that go unanswered. The rot. Wounds that don't heal, that bubble and stink that turn flesh into a science experiment you never wanted to conduct. There is no real medicine, just moss, ale, ash, and belief. Sometimes they work, more often they don't. You've seen someone bleed out from a stubbed toe. You've seen a child die because they drank from the wrong stream. You've seen strong men wither like frost-killed crops. And when someone dies, you don't call a doctor, you call the others. The women who know the songs. They come, wrap the body in wool, tuck it into a wooden box, or if the wood is short, a hole in the earth. Coins for the afterlife. a few personal items, and a whispered plea to stay buried. Because the dead don't always stay dead. At least not in stories. The old ones say that spirits linger. They walk during snowstorms. They knock on longhouse doors. They whisper to children who talk back and forget to wake up. So you keep your funeral rites tight, your offerings ready. You sprinkle ash across thresholds and hang bits of iron by the door, just in case. The night grows deeper. You lie down near the fire, curled beside your family, or what's left of it. There's no mattress, just straw, cloth, and the warmth of another breathing body. You scratch at your leg. The flea wins. You shift, adjusting your limbs around the invisible bruises of the day. Your breath fogs the air, then fades. Your eyes begin to close, but still you think. What if you don't wake up? You wouldn't be the first. You wouldn't be the last. The house knows death. It has held it before. Quietly, gently, without ceremony. Someone stops breathing. Someone else gets their bowl. Life goes on. But you lie still, listening to the fire pop, to the wind hum against the walls, to the shallow breaths of everyone around you, each one a tiny defiance against oblivion. And slowly your thoughts begin to fade. Not gone, just softened. You remember a warmer day. You remember laughter. You remember the goat falling into the well and blaming the witch. You remember how it felt to bite into a piece of smoked meat and feel, for 5 seconds, like a king. You remember being alive, and you cling to that memory as the dark folds over you like the rough wool of your blanket. Because here in Viking winter, death is not a stranger. But tonight, she passes you by, just this once. Let everything soften now. No more names, no more facts. Just the hush of an old world falling quiet. Let your breath slow. Let the blanket of sleep pull over your shoulders like soft velvet. You're safe and still, and the story is done. Fade gently.